If you were recently arrested for domestic violence, one of the questions that is probably going through your head is, am I going to prison for this? And if you look up PC 273.5a on the internet, you're starting to do research, you may see that you can serve up to 4 years in prison for it. So you may be getting more and more worried and thinking, is that going to be me? So in this video, I'm going to talk about the two circumstances in which you may go to prison if you were arrested for domestic violence. My name is Veronica. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in California, and I help people put their cases behind them so that they can enjoy their lives and their freedom. And again, in this video, I'm going to be going through two situations in which prison time might actually be a possibility if you were arrested for PC 273.5a, domestic violence, corporal injury to a spouse or cohabitant in California. Okay, so let's jump right in. Situation number one is where you have prior criminal history. Now, I'm not talking about a DUI. I'm not talking about petty theft. Most misdemeanors are not what I'm talking about. But what I am talking about are prior violent crimes, especially if you've gone to prison in, let's say, the last 10 years for something, or if you had a domestic violence prior or more than one domestic violence prior. That's where prison may be a real possibility for you. And I say real possibility because most people who were arrested for PC 273.5a, if it was their first time getting arrested, most of the time you're not going to go to prison. And I know that if you call some attorneys, if you do research on the internet and you see up to 4 years in prison, you see all these consequences emphasized, you have to realize that is worst case scenario. When you see up to 4 years in prison, that means that 4 years is what someone's going to get in the worst case. Most people will not get 4 years, and you can still get probation for it. In fact, PC 273.5a can also be reduced to a misdemeanor. And many times, actually, if someone calls me after they have been arrested, but before court, and we contact the DA before court, many times we're able to get them to drop the whole thing altogether. But criminal history is going to be key in determining what sentence you ultimately end up with if you do end up getting sentenced. Number two, serious injuries. If the other person has broken bones, for example, if the other person looks extremely beat up, they have multiple bruises on their face, for example, if the other person has a serious head injury, if the other person had to get stitches, then it is more likely that you could serve prison time, even if this is your very first time ever getting arrested for anything. There are other factors as well. For example, how strong is their case? Does the victim want to go forward with charges or not? If the victim doesn't want to go forward with charges, it doesn't mean that the case is going to be dismissed, which you may know by now if you've been doing your research on the internet. That's one of the first questions that people have. But it does mean that if the victim is pushing for charges against you, is pushing for prison time or jail time, it does make it more likely that that is what will end up happening. If you go to classes, if you hire an attorney who provides a really good mitigation packet, which describes all the good things about you, any hardships you've experienced, character letters, all of those things to the DA. Sometimes people need drug or alcohol treatment and are able to get that instead of going to prison, going to jail, or sometimes even being on probation. Or maybe they need mental health help. That can also be a reason why you would not go to jail, not go to prison. In making this video, I'm not trying to scare anyone here. Every case is different. In fact, I'm trying to do the opposite because in most cases, people who were arrested for PC 273.5a, corporal injury to a spouse or cohabitant, felony domestic violence in the state of California, most people don't have criminal history. Maybe there was just a loud argument, the neighbors called the cops, or your partner called the cops. And without there being much evidence, they made an arrest. And this is your very first time being arrested. Maybe the injury that they have is some old bruise on their arm, for example, or is more of a scratch, something that didn't even need medical attention. If you fall into both of these categories, you have no criminal history or really minimal, and there were no bad injuries, then most likely you're not going to prison, you're not even going to jail. My number one piece of advice for you, if you're in the state of California, is to hire an attorney to contact the DA before court, because there's a decent chance in your situation that the charges could possibly be dropped before court, so that means that the whole case is done. You never have to go to court whatsoever. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you do have a criminal case in California, feel free to book a consultation. You can find my number down below. You can also find a link to book directly there.